Today we're going back to our first lesson, which was cognitive dissonance. What is cognitive dissonance? Cognitive dissonance is the uncomfortable feeling we experience when our beliefs clash with reality. According to Festinger's 1957 theory, people abhor inconsistency and feel compelled to reduce this discomfort. Much how like we address hunger, the more important beliefs, the stronger the need to resolve the inconsistency. The discomfort of cognitive dissonance grows with conflicting beliefs when the conflicting beliefs are significant to us. For example, if we strongly believe in a prophecy but it fails, the dissonance becomes intense. This is why people often go to great lengths to resolve such inconsistencies. In everyday life, cognitive dissonance can influence our decisions and behaviors. We might change our attitudes or actions to feel consistent again. This theory helps us understand why people sometimes act in surprising ways to maintain their beliefs. In 1954, social psychologist Leon Festinger read a newspaper about an article about a group called the Seekers. They believed that Earth would flood on December 21st, 1955, and only true believers would be saved by a spaceship from planet Clarion. This provided Festinger with a perfect real-world scenario to test his new theory of cognitive dissonance. The Seekers were convinced that the end of the world was imminent. They prepared for the cataclysm by selling their possessions and emptying their bank accounts. Their strong commitment to the prophecy made the potential disconfirmation particularly interesting for Festinger's study. The Seekers had publicly committed to their belief, making it difficult for them to change their minds. Festinger argued that the public commitment would lock them into their story, leading them to find ways to justify their belief even in the face of contradictory evidence. Festinger predicted that the Seekers would not abandon their belief when the prophecy failed. Instead, they would become even more ardent in their conviction. This was based on the idea that people try to reduce dissonance by reinforcing their beliefs. Festinger hypothesized that the Seekers would turn to proselytizing as a way to reduce dissonance by convincing others of their belief. They could reinforce their own conviction. This strategy would help them cope with disconfirmation of the prophecy. Festinger and his colleagues predicted that the Seekers would not only maintain their belief, but also become more evangelical. They would spread their message to others, seeking social support to validate their belief system. On the night of December 21st, 1955, the Seekers gathered expecting a spaceship to arrive at midnight. However, no visitor appeared. The group sat in stunned silence as the clock struck midnight and the prophecy failed. This created a significant cognitive dissonance between their belief and reality. At 4:45 a.m., Mrs. Keach received a new message through automatic writing. The message stated that the group's goodness would have saved the world from destruction. This reinterpretation of events allowed the Seekers to resolve the dissonance and maintain their belief. The new message provided a way for the Seekers to justify their belief. Instead of admitting the prophecy was wrong, they believed that their actions had prevented the cataclysm. This reinforced their conviction and reduced the psychological discomfort of cognitive dissonance. After receiving the new message, the seekers immediately began to spread the word. They called newspapers and shared their story, as Fessinger had predicted. This proselytizing behavior was a direct attempt to reduce the dissonance caused by the failed prophecy. By sharing their message with others, the seekers sought social support from their belief. The more people they could convince, the more valid their belief seemed. The strategy helped them cope with disconfirmation and reinforce their conviction. The act of proselytizing not only helped the seekers reduce their dissonance, but also spread their belief to a wider audience. This behavior demonstrated the power of cognitive dissonance in shaping people's actions and communication. In the 1959 experiment conducted a lab experiments to test cognitive dissonance. Participants were asked to tell a peer that boring peg-turning task was fun. My bad. They were paid either $1 or $20 for their statement. Participants paid only $1 later rated the task more enjoyable than those paid $20. This was because the small reward created higher dissonance, forcing them to change their attitude to justify their behavior. The experiment showed that when people are paid a small amount to say something contrary to their beliefs, they are more likely to change their attitude to match their behavior. This supports Fessinger's theory of cognitive dissonance. This study demonstrated that cognitive dissonance can influence everyday decisions. People often adjust their attitudes to align with their actions, especially when there's little external justification for their behavior. Cognitive dissonance drives self-justification. When our beliefs crash with reality, we are either change the facts we tell others or adjust our private attitudes to maintain a consistent self-image. This helps us cope with the discomfort of inconsistency. One good example of this is a lukewarm Christian, or any equal to that in other religions. Their beliefs is that God wants their full commitment, yet their actions do the exact opposite. To resolve the dissonance, people either rationalize, God understands that I'm going through tough times in my life, and downplay the belief God doesn't expect me to be perfect, or they just adjust their behavior to align with their words with their actions. Modern research has shown that cognitive dissonance triggers measurable psychological changes. Skin conductance and brain activity increase when people act against their attitudes, confirming that dissonance is a real psychological state. Understanding these psychological responses helps us recognize cognitive dissonance in ourselves and others. It also validates Fessinger's theory, showing that the discomfort of inconsistency is not just a mental construct, but a tangible experience. To manage cognitive dissonance, we need to recognize we are frantically defending a choice or making excuses. These behaviors are signs of dissonance. By pausing and acknowledging the inconsistency, we can avoid spiraling into self-justification. Instead of changing our story to fit our actions, we should adjust our actions to align with our beliefs. This approach helps us maintain integrity and avoid the negative consequences of cognitive dissonance. Fessinger's theory teaches us that while we dislike inconsistency, we can learn from it. By addressing dissonance, constructively we can grow and make a better decisions in the future.